In my opinion, the nays have it. I declare the motion, or call in the members.
Accordingly, the vote is deferred. Statements by l'honorable député de Repentigny.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Madam Speaker, the Quebec Labrador Assembly of First Nations now formally opposes Energy East. This new voice, made up of 43 Aboriginal communities, carries a lot of weight. It is in addition to the chorus of voices in Quebec opposed to the project. That is to say 300 towns in Quebec, Montreal and its region, environmentalists, agricultural producers, civil society organizations, and people from every region of the province of Quebec. In short, it would be shorter to tell you who approves of the project rather than those who oppose it. The Quebec Nation and the Aboriginal Nation speak with one voice against Energy East. Serge Simon, Grand Chief of Kanesatake, sums it up very well. No to Energy East, period. The federal government needs to get its head out of the oil sands and listen to reason once and for all.
Member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Mr. Speaker, this is always a sad week for many families in my riding. In the end, finally, on the 19th of June 1959, the worst maritime disaster occurred in New Brunswick, where 35 fishermen, some as young as 13, died in a violent storm. There were no radio on the boat, and the storm came up with no warning. They faced winds 100 kilometers an hour and 15-meter waves. The boat was smashed to pieces, with left 80 children orphaned and many women widowed, some of whom are still alive today. And there was a monument built near the wharf that will never allow us to forget this great tragedy in my little riding.
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honoured to rise in this House to speak about a significant event happening in my riding at Caribou, Prince George. Every year during the Canada Day July 1st long weekend, my hometown of Williams Lake rolls out the welcome mat, with visitors flocking from far and wide to enjoy several days of the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association action at the world-famous Williams Lake Stampede. And it just so happens that this year happens to be the 90th anniversary. Top rodeo stars from across North America compete in premier rodeo events such as bull riding, saddle bronc, steer wrestling, team roping, tie-down roping, barrel racing, and of course the exciting mountain race. But most importantly, it's an opportunity for visitors from all over the world to witness the can-do, never accept no pioneering spirit of the Caribou. I'm so proud to call the riding at Caribou Prince George home, and I look forward to taking part in this year's 90th anniversary festivities at the world-famous Williams Lake Stampede. Yeehaw!
The honourable member for Tobique-Mactaquac.
Canada is a country which boasts Danish-Canadian communities from coast to coast to coast. As a member of Parliament for Tobique-Mactaquac, I am proud that the oldest Danish community in Canada is in my riding, in New Denmark, New Brunswick. On June 19th, known as Founders Day, New Denmark will be celebrating its 144th year as a Canadian community, a rural community of rolling hills and potato fields that lines the St. John River Valley. I am pleased to be invited as a guest at their celebration, not just to take in the traditional live Danish music, folk dancing, and ice cream, but because I will have the opportunity to delve into the rich history of this charming village and recognize their community on behalf of the Government of Canada. Congratulations to the community of New Denmark.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Later today, my bill C-221 will be debated in this House of Commons for the second time before going to final reading and voting as well too, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank the member for Skeena-Buckley Valley for his support for this bill. This bill will allow single event sports betting, Mr. Speaker, which is critical for the Canadian economy and also, most importantly, Mr. Speaker, taking away $14 billion of money to organized crime and unregulated offshore betting that's taking place right now in a market that induces our youth, and it also is supplying organized crime with money today that we will actually be able to reroute to public infrastructure, health care, education, gaming addiction, and, Mr. Speaker, a number of different priorities that Canadians want. Now, Mr. Speaker, sports analysts across the world are coming to the conclusion that regulation is necessary for this activity that's taking place. And, Mr. Speaker, this bill, to be clear, allows the provinces to choose to do this if they so choose. Doesn't make them do anything, Mr. Speaker. And why would Liberals be opposed to the province of Ontario? Are they listening anymore?
The honourable member for Lac Saint Louis.
Nice to congratulate the West Island Youth Symphony Orchestra on its 30th anniversary. This is a proud milestone for Maestro Stuart Grant, the musicians and parent volunteers who have fashioned the orchestra into the musical force it is today.
The orchestra is a pillar of the West Island's cultural life. It offers young musicians the opportunity to develop their talent while offering residents the opportunity to go to high-quality classical music concerts.
The orchestra's performances on many occasions. Each time I have been impressed and inspired by its passion, virtuosity, and commitment to musical excellence. In keeping with its mission of providing its young musicians with opportunities for personal and musical growth, the orchestra has many times toured both at home and abroad.
I ask the honourable members to join me in wishing Maestro Grant and the West Island Youth Symphony Orchestra the greatest success in the years to come.
For Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, it is graduation season, and I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the grade 12 graduates in Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek. There are 32 high schools in my riding, and I look forward to attending as many ceremonies as possible over the next few weeks. Finishing high school is an accomplishment to be very proud of. Graduation offers graduates the opportunity to reflect on the friendships and memories made, the personal goals achieved, and successes earned. It also offers them the opportunity to envision their future and all the dreams to which they aspire. I encourage all grads to not only dream big, but to pursue those dreams. Your future is filled with hope and promise, and I'm excited for the contributions you will make, not only to our province, but to this great nation. Thank you.
The honourable member for Brampton North.
Mr. Speaker, since I was a little girl, Brampton has been my home. As I grew, so did Brampton. It is now the 9th largest city in Canada, and I'm honored to be the MP for Brampton North. However, like so many youth in Brampton, I pursued post-secondary education, first in Hamilton and then in Michigan. This is because Brampton is the only city amongst the top 10 cities in Canada that does not have a major university campus. A new university campus in Brampton would deliver post-secondary education to a community that is underserved while also reducing the burden on students and creating a massive economic benefits for all Brantonians. I will work with my fellow Brampton representatives at the municipal, provincial, and federal level to ensure that Brampton can serve its growing demand for a university. I encourage the Ontario provincial government to release the second targeted call for proposals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Longueuil, Charles-Le-Moyne.
Longueuil, Charles-Le-Moyne.
Longueuil, Charles-Le-Moyne.
Start the time over. Honorable député de Longueuil, Charles.
The honourable member for Longueuil, Charles-Le-Moyne.
There seems to be a problem with the microphone. Let's try. I see the members like. Okay.
Mr. Speaker, as the school year comes to an end, I think it's safe to say that summer vacation is on everyone's mind. Memories of summer camp are usually filled with joyous moments spent with friends, but for citizens of my riding, this time comes with a heavy heart. You see, Mr. Speaker, this year is the 35th anniversary of the passing of William Carlos Tull, who passed away at CFS Lac Saint-Denis in 1981. What should have been a fun swim on the beach for cadets turned to tragedy as Billy Tull jumped into the water and never came up. His best friend, Alex Zanetis, who also jumped in, rushed to his rescue, risking his own life in the process. Billy was a proud member of the 1979 Centennial Cadet Corps in my riding. and a loving brother, son, and friend who will not be forgotten. I'd like to take this moment, Mr. Speaker, to invite the House to join me in commemorating the life and legacy of Billy Tull and honoring the bravery of his friend, Alex Zanetis. Thank you.
Honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to a very important group of employees on the Hill, those who work at Children on the Hill Daycare. They have provided care for children 18 months to 5 years of age since 1981. Their dedication, organization, and care for all the children is extraordinary and very much appreciated. My son Tristan has been going to Children on the Hill since September of 2013. They deserve a special thanks for taking tremendous care of the children during the horrible events that unfolded on October 22nd, 2014. Their courage, care, and commitment to ensuring all were happy and secure at the daycare will always be remembered, and we are very grateful for all their efforts. It is with a heavy heart that my wife and I will be taking Tristan out of the daycare as he heads to school. Thanks to Children on the Hill for all they do and for making our son's first learning years unforgettable. We will miss seeing you all. What you do is the most important work out there.
The honourable member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
The theme of this year's World Refugee Day in Waterloo Region is Waterloo Region Celebrates Refugees. Indeed, Waterloo Region does celebrate refugees. We have a long history of welcoming refugees, including Russian Mennonites in the 1920s and Vietnamese refugees in the 1970s. Over the last 6 months, different levels of government, settlement agencies, and other service providers in Waterloo Region have come together to welcome and resettle over 1,000 Syrian refugees. The collaboration has been key to the successful resettlement of refugees in our region. Thank you to the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, Reception House Waterloo Region, KW Multicultural Center, the YMCA Cambridge and Kitchener-Waterloo Immigrant Services, and all those other organizations and associations that make our region an amazing place to live. Thank you.
Member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I stand in this House to brazenly boast about a dance company in my riding of Vancouver Centre. Ballet BC ranks among the top 3 companies in North America, just ending tours in England and New York to rave reviews. Ballet BC is a progressive company that pushes the limits of classical ballet to new and dazzling heights. Experimental, daring, it challenges the human body to extraordinary feats of endurance and interpretation through dance. What is remarkable about Ballet BC is the exclusive partnership they have with talented Canadian choreographers across the country. I recently witnessed these partnerships in action as Ballet BC performed 3 dynamic and progressive pieces at Ottawa's NAC during Canada Dance Fest. One with in-house choreographer Emily Molnar, and the other 2 with choreographers from other provincial ballets. Each piece received sustained standing ovations. BC Ballet has put Canadian dance on the map, and in their tours are stellar ambassadors for Canada's creative sector.
The honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Langley's 2016 Environmental Heroes were just honored in beautiful Fort Langley. The winners were in 3 categories: individual, group, and youth. An apple tree was planted in their honor in the Heritage Hudson's Bay Orchard. Anne Blau won the individual category for establishing Blau Eco-Forest in North Langley. The family donated millions of dollars in memory of Thomas Blau, with a covenant agreement with Trinity Western University to preserve the forest for education, research, and community engagement. The winner of the group category was the Coastal Painted Turtle Project for efforts to return the turtle's population to sustainable levels. Desiree Check-Harder won the youth category. The Langley Fine Arts students spoke about the community garden and the importance of educating people to engage in the environment. This is the 10th anniversary of the Langley Environmental Hero Awards. Congratulations to this year's Langley Environmental Heroes.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to bring to the House's attention the passing of Russell Rusty Charles Goodman of Kelowna, British Columbia. Mr. Goodman was an accomplished artist, designing and installing over 1,000 stained glass windows in private and public buildings across this country. He was also founder of the Goodman-Zessoff Stained Glass Studio, which has created stained glass windows for the House of Commons and, most notably, the Senate foyer commemorating the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Recognized widely for his work, Russell Goodman's awarded the Order of Canada, the Governor-General's Award for Visual and Media Arts, and the Queen's Jubilee and Diamond Jubilee Awards. Our thoughts are with his wife Nancy, son Mark, Scott, and Christopher, who is also a stained glass artist. Russell Goodman's beautiful art will live on in many places throughout this country, including Parliament. Rest in peace, Rusty.
I'm wondering if there's a problem with the translation. I have some indication there's a problem with the translation. It's working now. Okay. The honourable member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to pay tribute to the life of Joe Cox, a mom of two beautiful children, and a friend, a dedicated Labour MP and a long advocate of human rights in Britain and around the world who was murdered today. Joe used her voice for those who have none. She dedicated her passion to those who needed it most, and she harnessed her limitless love, even and especially for those who allowed hate to consume them. Her husband, Brendan, said it beautifully. She would have wanted two things above all else to happen now, that our children are bathed in love and that we all unite to fight against the hatred that killed her. To Brendan, to Joe's beautiful children, we express our deepest condolences.
Member for Durham.
Speaker, the Prime Minister is the Member of Parliament for Papineau, a riding named after Joseph Papineau, one of the most significant figures in Quebec history. Papineau's great-grandson was World War I hero Talbot Papineau, a PPCLI officer, Military Cross winner, and a writer called The Soul of Canada. Ironically, the Prime Minister, when he was an actor, portrayed Talbot Papineau in the CBC movie The Great War. In 1917, in a speech to soldiers near the front, Papineau made this pledge to Canada's injured veterans. For those who have been disabled, who cannot carry on the good fight, it is certainly for us to see that they want for nothing. Mr. Speaker, this statement by Papineau is yet another expression of the tremendous obligation Canada owes to our injured veterans, an obligation that this week the Member of Parliament for Papineau is denying in a courtroom in Vancouver. Talbot Papineau died a century ago at Passchendaele, but the Prime Minister has the power today to fulfill the pledge Papineau made. I ask that the Prime Minister, the member for Papineau, once again act like Talbot Papineau and stop the court fight with our veterans.
The Honourable Member for Louis-Hébert. Mr. Speaker, last Tuesday, the Honourable Gilles Lamontagne passed away, the Mayor of Montreal from 1965 and a Member of Parliament in the 1990s, Federal Minister under the Trudeau government, and Officer of the Order of Canada and of the Legion of Honour of France. Mr. Lamontagne did everything. He was a man of action who not only served his country, but also risked his life to defend it. Mr. Lamontagne was an airman in the Second World War and a bomber pilot. He was a prisoner of war in a concentration camp for over 2 years. He was a hero, a builder, a statesman, and for all of us in Quebec, he will also be Mr. Mayor. I'm too young, and I've been here too short a time to have known Mr. Lamontagne, but I know that all those who want to serve and represent Canada and Quebec, we all are serving in the same way. On behalf of all of my friends, his friends, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in honour of Ms. Jo Cox, United Kingdom Member of Parliament for Batley and Spen. I now invite the House to rise to observe a moment of silence. Merci. Thank you. Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable member for Midnapore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A report from the United Nations reveals the details of the mass murders and the sexual slavery of thousands of Yazidis by the so-called Islamic State. The report concludes that this genocide is ongoing. So, Mr. Speaker, now that the United Nations, the European Union, the United States, and the UK have all recognized the self-proclaimed genocide of Daesh, will this government call this campaign of extermination by its real name, genocide? Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, as I have said many times in this House, we strongly condemn the horrific atrocities committed by the so-called Islamic State. Today, for the first time, an independent report by the UN Commission has concluded that genocide was committed by the so-called Islamic State against the Yazidis. Given this evidence, our government believes that genocide against the Yazidis is currently ongoing, and that is why, as I said a month ago, we call once again for urgent action on the part of the UN Security Council.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that it took this stubborn minister so long to realize the facts that have been staring the world in the face. And while I appreciate his reflection on today's UN report with respect to the Yazidis, his statement today is simply insufficient because this genocide affects more than the Yazidis. It affects the other indigenous minorities of Mesopotamia. It affects the Assyrians and the Chaldeans and the Armenians. And so will he not join the US, EU, and UK and the opposition in recognizing the broader genocide of Daesh?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
In fact, Mr. Speaker, our position is exactly the same that the one of the government of Britain, the government of the administration of the United States. The difference, though, is that we are taking the lead in asking the Council of Security to be sure that they will prosecute the perpetrators of these atrocities and investigate in order to understand very well what is happening on the ground. But in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, we have tripled our effort to help to fight on the ground ISIL, because we need to rescue these populations. This is the priority.
Member for Calgary-Mindapore.
Mr. Speaker, I find it disturbing that the Minister of Foreign Affairs is so profoundly misinformed on a matter of such great moral importance, because in fact, the United States, UK, and EU, in their motions recognizing this genocide, apply that term to what this terrorist death cult is doing to the Chaldeans, to the Assyrians, to the Armenians, to the Christians, and to other indigenous minorities, not only the terribly benighted Yazidis. And so will he not again follow that international lead, follow Canada's natural moral conscience, and recognize the broader genocide happening?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague is wrong. The government of Britain and the White House have the same approach than us, but that's not the main point. The main point is that we need to rescue these populations. It's why we have tripled our effort to train the Peshmergas, that is the fighters, the best in situation to rapidly rescue these populations in danger. That's the priority we have, and it's why we are taking the lead, Mr. Speaker.
Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, since the Minister of Foreign Affairs has declared the content of the UN report today to be valid, my question is to the Minister of Immigration. One of the recommendations of this report is to immediately accelerate the asylum applications of Yazidi victims of genocide. Will the Minister of Immigration finally accept this recommendation, which the opposition has been making for many, many months, including the Leader of the Opposition, and tell the House how he immediately plans to accelerate these applications?
Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question, and as I have said many times, we deplore and condemn these atrocities. I understand that a number of Yazidi families will be arriving in Winnipeg within a few weeks, and these are coming in under privately sponsored refugee program. I understand that the Immigration Committee only today voted unanimously to study the situation of people in difficult-to-get-to terrains. So those are good steps.
The honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
The number of Yazidi cases this government has processed is 9, and that's not acceptable, Mr. Speaker. This report calls for the immediate acceleration of these applications. This government has not done that. With one stroke of a pen, Mr. Speaker, the minister can sign an order under Section 25 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act with one stroke of his pen and bring thousands of Yazidis here to safety. Yeah. Will he commit to doing that today?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, to say one can do something with one stroke of a pen when the individuals are in an extremely dangerous, difficult to arrive at territory is a bit far-fetched. But, Mr. Speaker, we take this situation very seriously. We are studying it. We are welcoming a number of Yazidis into Canada in coming weeks, and we will work very hard to do more, not just for Yazidis, but to other endangered groups in difficult-to-reach territories of the world.
Honourable member for Hochelaga.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is now the second largest exporter of weapons to the Middle East, behind only the United States. But when it comes to arms sales to Saudi Arabia, not only has the Minister of Foreign Affairs contradicted himself repeatedly, but Liberals also rejected a proposal from the NDP's Foreign Affairs critic to establish parliamentary oversight for all international arms sales. Will Liberals drop the excuses, embrace accountability, and agree to our proposal for better parliamentary oversight of weapons sales?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, is the party of my honourable colleague who contradicted itself. In order to have the seat, they said something, and after the election, they say something else. Right. But we are very consistent, Mr. Speaker. It's very clear that I have the power as Minister of Foreign Affairs to stop the export permits if the weapon was poorly used regarding our national interest, the interest of our allies, or human rights. And the Prime Minister asked me to exercise this power with a lot of rigor and a lot of transparency.
The honourable member for Hochelaga. A secret document dated May 2011 shows that half the Afghan detainees had no links with the Taliban. Yesterday, an open letter signed by Canadian military policemen calls for, and I quote, "Why and how could this contempt for our laws and Canadian values have occurred? The government must answer this question honestly and in depth so that these practices never happen again. Will the Liberal government finally shoulder its responsibilities and hold an independent public inquiry?"
Honourable Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, this issue has been subject to some considerable inquiry over the last number of years. These are policies and procedures that the Canadian military takes very seriously. The previous inquiries have included the Vice Chief of Defence staff in 2010, an investigation by the Canadian Forces National Investigation in 2011, a public interest hearing by military police complaints over 4 years in 2012, and there is a continuing investigation that commenced in 2015.
For Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, the amendments to Bill C-14 are now before this House. We still have the opportunity to pass a bill that respects people's right to access to medical assistance in dying. Instead of forcing Canadians who are suffering terribly to fight for years before the courts, will this government accept our amendment that makes this bill constitutional?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've said many times in this House that I am confident that this bill is constitutional. We have worked very hard on an extremely complex issue to find the right and necessary balance between personal autonomy and protecting the vulnerable. There are multiple objectives contained within Bill C-14. It is the right approach for Canada right now, and we look forward to, hopefully soon, having our legislation in place.
Member for Victoria.
The fact is the Liberal government is being stubborn and intransigent, rejecting the evidence and advice of Canada's top experts in both medicine and law. Liberals are choosing to narrow charter rights instead of expanding them, as a truly progressive government would do. Mr. Speaker, if Liberals really are so allergic to compromise, and if they really believe that they are correct in law, will they agree to refer this bill to the Supreme Court? Why are the Liberals so afraid to ask the Supreme Court to review this bill?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, we take our responsibilities incredibly seriously. The Supreme Court of Canada said two things in the Carter decision. An absolute ban on medical assistance in dying is unconstitutional. And they left it up to Parliament to determine what the appropriate national regime is for medical assistance in dying. We have heard from a vast majority of people. We are taking the responsible approach. We are legislating for all Canadians, and I look forward to, hopefully soon, having legislation in place on medical assistance.
Excellent. The member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, today's UN report is unequivocal that genocide against Yazidis has occurred and is ongoing, and as important, that there must be no impunity for these crimes. Now, the Liberals have spent months until today making excuses for refusing to recognize this as genocide, but every state, Mr. Speaker, and this includes Canada, has an obligation to act, to prevent, and to punish genocide. Now that the Minister has finally spoken the word, will Canada restore the combat mission?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, in fact, we have tripled our capacity to train the Peshmergas that are the fighters in the best situation to rescue these populations. We have a strong plan. Canadians must be proud of what Canadians are doing in Iraq and in Syria with our allies. We improved the plan precisely because we need to act to protect these populations.
Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've heard a litany of blatantly implausible excuses for the Liberals' genocide denial. One of the early excuses was that if Liberals acknowledged the horrifically obvious, Canada would be obliged to do something. We haven't heard that excuse for a while. The minister's been hiding until today behind process. But, Mr. Speaker, is that the real reason? Have the Liberals denied genocide to avoid restoring and extending Canada's anti-Daesh combat mission?
Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague is wrong. In fact, we act with a lot of strength to be sure that we'll eradicate this awful terrorist group, which is the so-called Islamic State. It's why we have tripled our capacity to train the Peshmerga in order to be sure that we'll be rescuing these populations. That is the goal. And I ask all my colleagues, I call all my colleagues to support the plan that Canada is making on the ground to help these populations.
For Milton.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister is trying to strong-arm the premiers in this country to support his plan to increase CPP by over $3,000 a year. Wow. That is a tax nobody can afford. Absolutely. Customers will pay higher prices for everything. Employees will be taking home less in their pay. And we've already seen small businesses this morning begging the Minister of Finance to stop. Mr. Speaker, why won't he listen?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we made a promise to Canadians that we would enable them to retire in dignity. We've started down that path in Budget 2016. We improved the guaranteed income supplement for single seniors. We changed the old age security to ensure people could get retirement security when they needed it. And now we're working in collaboration with the provinces to make sure that we can come up with an enhancement to the Canada Pension Plan that will enable the next generation of Canadians to retire in dignity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, we want the minister to actually listen to Canadians.
Yes.
He doesn't want to hear how his plan is going to cost Canadian families. He doesn't want to hear how his plan is going to force businesses to fire employees. He doesn't want to hear how actually families will go home with fewer paychecks. Even his own advisors have told him that 83% of Canadian households don't face a pension crisis. Wow. When is the minister going to stop Canadians in order to pay for his social engineering?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we know that investments in the future of Canadians are just that, investments in helping people to have a better retirement. We are focused on ensuring that we actually help those Canadians who are in need of more saving for retirement. That's exactly what we're trying to do by working together with provinces to make sure that they have a way to save appropriately for a dignified retirement, and then do it in a way that is gradual so that people and businesses can get along that path in an appropriate way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are concerned, and no wonder, because on Monday, the Minister of Finance will meet in Vancouver with his provincial counterparts, and they're going to talk about Canadians' pension plans. Canadians are concerned because since this government has come to power, every time the Liberal Party touches something, it either finishes with a rise or with a deficit. So Canadians are worried. Here's a simple question. Can the Minister of Finance assure us that there will be no premium increases? Honourable Minister of Finance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, we made a promise to Canadians during our campaign. We promised to enhance and improve our pension system to ensure that Canadians can retire with dignity. That's exactly what we have begun to do. We began with an increase of our guaranteed income supplement, and now I am cooperating with the provinces to be sure that Canadians in future will be able to retire with dignity. Thank you. I would like to remind the Minister that he made a promise to Canadians that the tax changes would be at zero cost, but now we're in $1.7 billion of deficit. That's why Canadians are worried. When we talk about pensions, Mr. Speaker, the small businesses are our creators of jobs and of wealth, and if ever this government follows the example of its Ontario friends, it's going to cost $3,000 more for each employee for small businesses. Can the Minister assure us that there will be no premium increases, yes or no? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, investments in the future are real investments. These investments are going to ensure that Canadians can retire with dignity. That is exactly what I am working on with the provinces. We are cooperating for the improvement of the Canada Pension Plan. It's good for the future of Canada, and it's good for the future of all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagod. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals had promised a different approach to their relationship with veterans. But what we can see now is that real change is just the same old thing. Not only does the Liberal government continue to bring our veterans to court, but we have learned that too many veterans have problems having access to long-term care centres, and some of these centres are threatened with shutdown. Does the government pledge to reinvest to ensure all veterans that they will have access to long-term care when they need it?
Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Our government supports veterans in over 1,500 long-term care facilities across this nation. We support veterans at whatever care level they need, and we pay for that care. And of course, we work with our provincial government partners to ensure they have access to these long-term care facilities. We are committed to veterans and the long-term care that they need and that they get.
Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, just like the Conservatives before them, Liberals are shamefully denying benefits to veterans. Care is downloaded to the provinces, while federal facilities close beds or shut their doors. Peter Blindheim is a decorated 94-year-old war veteran, but he's been refused space at Camp Hill Veterans Hospital in Halifax. This is simply a disgrace. Will Liberals change course and agree to start investing in long-term care so that all veterans can have access to the care that they need and deserve?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Well, I thank my honourable colleague for the questions. Veterans supports allied veterans, including those from Norway, nationwide. We pay for their long-term care in 1,500 community facilities. We can also help them remain in their homes by providing a comprehensive home care service that includes personal health care, housekeeping, as well as yard work.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, the downturn in the oil and gas sector has left many Western Canadians without work. And shamefully, the Liberals want to increase taxes on job creators and keep the industry down indefinitely. They continue to ignore a ready-made solution, which is to clean up decommissioned oil and gas wells. Cleaning up these wells would put unemployed Canadians back to work, retain expertise, and create economic and environmental benefits. Will the Liberals stop their attack on oil and gas workers and help get them back to work?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member knows, it's the responsibility of those who created the problem in the first place to clean it up. If the Premier of Alberta or the Premier of Saskatchewan believes that it's a top priority for infrastructure investments in their province, then I'm sure that the government would be interested in considering their request.
For Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, we've learned that in November, the Prime Minister's own department asked Google to remove dozens of public documents from government websites. This happened 51 times. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's website is not his own website to do with what he pleases. It belongs to the Canadian people. It cannot just be changed at the whim of the Liberals. Who in the Prime Minister's office ordered this deletion, and will they reverse this?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, all of the previous Prime Minister's archived web content can be accessed via Library and Archives Canada, along with other archived government materials. Canadians expect government websites to reflect the most up-to-date information and accurate information when they're searching on these sites. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, and I assure my friend opposite, that our government hopes that the memory of the former Conservative Prime Ministers lives in the minds of Canadians for a very long time.
The Honourable Member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last weekend, journalist and noted electoral reform advocate Andrew Coyne criticized the Liberals' schedule for the Committee on Electoral Reform. Quote, "The very tightness of the timeline feeds suspicions that the Liberals are trying to rig the process in favor of their own allegedly preferred reform model." End quote. Nonetheless, the short timeline does give the Liberals enough time to conduct a national referendum in 2017 after they introduce their final proposal. So, keeping this in mind, will they use the available time to hold a national referendum and give Canadians the final say?
Mr. Secretary for Democratic Institutions.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me quote the member opposite in 2014 when the Unfair Elections Act was being rammed through with no consultations, when the opposition parties weren't being engaged at all and expert witnesses weren't being listened to. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, you didn't say anything. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that there's a change of heart and that we want to see Canadians be engaged, and there's a process for that. We have a committee working with the member opposite. I hope he's going to take the opportunity to hear from Canadians and ensure that that process is as valid as it can be.
Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, for the past 8 months, the official opposition has been asking perfectly legitimate questions on electoral reform, and every time the minister answers the very same thing. We can all see that the minister does not listen to journalists and analysts, political experts, 3/4 of the Canadian population, and even her own colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. My question is simple, Mr. Speaker. Why does the minister insist on ignoring everyone who is calling for a referendum? Is it because she doesn't trust them? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, quite the contrary. In fact, it was the party opposite that said they were going to support a motion from the NDP on the change of the committee to make it one of the first, maybe the first ever committee that a majority government allowed to be controlled by minority parties. They made that suggestion, we listened, and then they voted against it. But the point of the matter is that we are ready to work with them and with all parties, including on the issue they mentioned. A committee, hopefully, that will begin its work next week, can examine these issues, engage Canadians, and in the process, improve our democracy.
Honourable Member for Desnethi, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Speaker, the Northlands Dene, Sulthina, Athabasca Dene, and Saizi Dene First Nations have been in land claims negotiations with the federal government for over 16 years. An agreement is closed, but this Liberal government is refusing to move forward on the next steps towards ratification. If this government is really committed to reconciliation and a nation-to-nation relationship, Will the minister instruct her officials to stop stalling and move forward immediately on the next steps toward ratification? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Member, for the question, as the member well knows, that this is not just an agreement between the federal government and the First Nation or the land claim. It requires the cooperation of all the provinces and territories that are involved in this, and we are working with those other jurisdictions to try and find a resolution to this.
Honourable Member for Churchill, Kiwatinook, Aski.
Mr. Speaker, what's missing here is federal leadership, and the fact is that under the previous government, some progress was made on this file, and the Liberals are stalling. The Saizi Dene and Northland's Denisuline have worked for over 16 years to resolve this land claim, and they are waiting for the federal government to step it up. Mr. Speaker, this is about reconciliation, and reconciliation includes resolving land claims like the Denisuline claim. So will the minister instruct her officials to work with the Denisuline to resolve this land claim as soon as possible?
Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I reassure the member that the new approach of our government in terms of trying to resolve these land claims, the approach of creative solutions working together is happening now, and that we will do everything in our power to be able to offer that leadership to be able to resolve this claim.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough, Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, in the previous Parliament and during last year's election campaign, we committed to keeping Canadians safe while ensuring that our national security framework complies with the Charter and reflects Canadians' values. This morning, the government upheld an important part of that commitment by introducing legislation to establish a committee of parliamentarians that will provide new review and scrutiny for departments and agencies with national security responsibilities. Can the Minister of Public Safety please tell the House what else he's doing to protect both Canada's national security and the rights and freedoms of Canadians?
The Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, my thanks to the member for Scarborough Agincourt. On national security, we will provide new scrutiny by the Committee of Parliamentarians and a new Office for Community Outreach, and careful compliance with the Charter and a more precise definition of terrorist propaganda and repairs to no-fly appeals, full protection of the right to advocate and protest, and a statutory review after 3 years. And for the first time ever, Canadians will be honestly consulted on what other steps are necessary to keep Canadians safe and to safeguard our values, rights and freedoms.
Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, the Prime Minister had said no veteran will have to fight his own government for the support and benefits he's due. Now, we know that these words were nothing more than empty rhetoric, given that the Prime Minister and his party have sent the veterans before the courts rather than conclude the settlement negotiations that our Conservative government had initiated. Mr. Speaker, why are the Liberals distancing themselves from their election promises and turning their backs on veterans?
Our government is committed to our sacred obligation to Canada's veterans, and this is outlined in the strong mandate given to me by the Prime Minister to repair the relationship with those men and women who have served this great nation. We made a commitment in our platform to restore the option for a lifelong pension for veterans, and that's what we'll do. Budget 2016 took historic steps, getting financial security to veterans and their families by investing $5.6 billion. I committed to working with all veterans and stakeholders to make this happen. We will fulfill our mandate commitments to our veterans.
And tired to hear the same old story all the time. But it gets worse than that. On mail-outs to the riding of Winnipeg Centre, the Liberals deliberately misled Canadians when they said that they have reinstated lifelong pension for aging veterans. Shameful. Such a statement is clearly false. People now expect the Liberals to break promise after promise, but it is a totally different story to directly mislead veterans. Mr. Speaker, when will the Liberals begin to tell the truth to our veterans?
Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, in the election, we made strong commitments to veterans to heal the relationship that was sadly broken under their government over the last 10 years. We made great steps in Budget 2016, delivering $5.6 billion in financial security to veterans and their families. We will continue to work on our mandate letter, restoring options for a lifelong pension, building up opportunities for them in education and retraining to see them fit their new normal and get to civilian life in a dignified, refined fashion, and we will deliver on what we've said we would do in the election.
Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
Mr. Speaker, veterans are not buying this minister's excuses. Our Conservative government expanded the permanent impairment allowance and created the retirement income security benefit to provide lifetime financial support to injured veterans. We struck an agreement with the Equitable Society on their lawsuit. Now the Liberals have broken their word and have taken the veterans back to court. Who made the decision to abandon the previous government's agreement? Was it the Minister of Veterans Affairs or was it the Minister of Justice?
The Minister of Veterans Affairs.
As this member full well knows, the lawsuit started under the previous administration, and they merely kicked the can down the road for our government to deal with. And that is exactly what we are doing. We are delivering on our commitments to veterans. We are going to fulfill our mandate letter, and we are going to return an option for veterans on a lifelong pension. But Budget 216, I'll remind the member, we expanded the community impairment access. We expanded opportunities for earning loss benefit. We're delivering on behalf of veterans, and we will continue to do so.
Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has allowed an agreement in the Equitas veterans lawsuit to fall apart, and his lawyers are back to attacking veterans. Terrible. The Prime Minister promised to uphold the sacred obligation to our veterans, and his minister quotes this obligation today in the House, yet lawyers this week in Vancouver are denying this sacred obligation, Mr. Speaker. When will the Prime Minister and the silent veterans in his caucus finally stand up, take this court case out of circulation, and keep their promises to our Equitas veterans?
Veterans Affairs.
We understand on this side of the House that we do have a sacred obligation to our veterans, and we are doing that daily. We are fulfilling our mandate commitments. We are fulfilling our obligations to increase financial securities for our veterans and for those who are most severely disabled. We did that in Budget 2016. We're going to continue to work on our mandate items, including an option for a lifetime pension. I would ask the member to understand that what he did was merely kick this problem down the road, and we are actually dealing with it at this time.
Member for Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, 7 out of 10 Canadians have no workplace pension, and many have inadequate savings to retire. The Liberals promised to expand the CPP, but on the eve of a meeting with the provinces, the Liberals have still not said what they are trying to achieve. The complete lack of leadership from the federal government jeopardizes any progress at all. Will the finance minister publicly commit to pushing for expanded CP benefits so that all Canadians can retire in dignity?
Minister of Finance.
Well, yes, Mr. Speaker, I will. I'll make a public commitment right here and now that we are looking to work with the provinces to expand the Canada Pension Plan, to make sure that this plan allows Canadians today and in the future to have a dignified retirement. I am looking forward to a meeting this coming Sunday night and Monday where we'll be talking with the provinces, working together, and I hope to have something positive to report to this House in the coming days. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, I wish to congratulate the City of Longueuil, the citizens of the Cap-à-El, and the pilot school that came to an agreement to improve the residents' quality of life. This includes the installation of new mufflers on the planes. However, for 3 months, Transport Canada has been delaying approval of these mufflers. Could the minister require that Transport Canada approve these mufflers without further delay? 3 months? The Honourable Minister of Transport. With regard to noise caused by aircraft, we always encourage citizens of the region to talk to the airport and the airport authorities and come to some conclusion. There are rules, and I encourage the two parties to continue talks.
Back home.
Mr. Speaker, the offshore northern shrimp fishery employs hundreds of Maritimers. Despite the importance of the northern shrimp fishery to communities in the Maritimes, 3 of the 4 members of the so-called Independent Advisory Panel are from Newfoundland and Labrador. But one panel member is married to the chief negotiator for an organization that appeared before the committee to oppose the offshore fishery. When will this part-time Minister of Fisheries admit that the panel is rigged and does not represent the interests of maritimers?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, we're certainly not going to admit such a thing because it would not be accurate. The member knows very well the panel was set up to provide independent advice to the government. It was a commitment we made in our campaign platform to review LIFO. We understand the importance of the northern shrimp fishery to coastal communities and to businesses that have invested considerably in this fishery. We're looking forward to receiving the recommendations of the independent panel next week. And then, Mr. Speaker, I'll have the responsibility of making a decision.
The honourable member for Chilliwack HoC.
Mr. Speaker, the panel was set up with not a single member from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, or PEI. The offshore northern shrimp fishery is worth $131 million a year to Nova Scotia companies alone. Despite the importance of this industry to Nova Scotia, the minister's so-called independent advisory panel is all but ignoring the province. Of the 7 public hearings that were held, only 1 meeting took place in Nova Scotia. Why is this part-time Minister of Fisheries ignoring the concerns of Nova Scotians? And why won't Nova Scotia Liberal MPs stand up for their province?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure my colleague that all members of the Liberal caucus from Atlantic Canada have spoken to me forcefully about the importance of the northern shrimp fishery. We've heard from the government of Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. We've also heard from other provincial governments, including my own in New Brunswick, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, and Prince Edward Island. Once we have the report of the independent panel, of course I'll be consulting with my caucus colleagues and many others in this sector, and then I'll have the responsibility of making the right decision.
Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, last night the Liberals had the opportunity to support a bill that would have helped save hundreds of Canadian lives. Canadians were shocked that the Liberals defeated Bill C-223, which would have established a national organ donor registry. The Liberals should be ashamed that they chose to play petty politics over the well-being of those who need an organ transplant. Mr. Speaker, can the Liberals explain why they chose to defeat a bill that would have saved so many lives for absolutely no reason other than partisanship?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. Our government works alongside Canadian Blood Services and AMAC Quebec. We are fully in support of making sure that organ and tissue donations are done well in this country. There is a Canadian transplant registry to which we have already committed $64 million in recent years to develop. This is a matter that is under provincial jurisdiction, and it is for that reason that the bill was unsupportable. We encourage all Canadians to consider going online now and committing to being an organ donor. Thank you.
Order. The member for Edmonton Manning has exercised himself strongly on this, but he needs to restrain himself and not react when someone else is speaking. Wait till he has the floor. The member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Infrastructure has been mandated to invest $120 billion in infrastructure to promote economic growth and job creation. Budget 2016 commits $3.4 billion to public transit. Provincial and territorial governments are key partners in successful infrastructure projects, and the minister is expected to align his efforts with existing provincial, territory, and municipal priorities. My question is for the Minister of Infrastructure. Can the minister provide an update on the status of such efforts to collaborate and forge bilateral agreements?
Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, for his question. We are proud to deliver on our long-term infrastructure investment commitments. And today, Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister announced our first bilateral agreement investing $460 million in public transit in British Columbia, leveraging more than $920 million altogether. This funding will support projects that will create jobs immediately, grow the economy, reduce traffic congestion, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and help build strong, inclusive communities.
Member for York Simcoe.
Closing Canada's only museum dedicated to Confederation, cutting Confederation out as a theme of the 150th, writing the War of 1812 out of the Citizenship Guide, rejecting the donation of John Diefenbaker's birthplace. This Liberal government is engaged in an all-out war on Canadian history. Now they are shutting down proposals for a commemorative medal for the 150th anniversary of Confederation. Why do the Liberals want to mark this anniversary by killing a tradition as old as our country, that of recognizing worthy citizens with a commemorative medal? Why this Liberal war on history?
Why? Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government won't take any lessons from a past government that forgot to include the Indigenous perspective and their own way of seeing our country's history. In that context, we will make sure that 2017 is a very inclusive celebration, and I would like to point out to my colleague that this morning I had the chance to announce $5 million to the Ottawa 2017 region in order for the National Capital Region to celebrate. Thank you.
The Honourable support Moody Coquitlam.
The Liberals promised to make evidence-based decisions. They promised to respect the Cohen Commission. But Justice Cohen said we must address the dangers fish farming posed to wild salmon. Yet the Fisheries Minister has actually extended the licenses for open net fish farms from 1 year to 6. He did so with no public consultation and no environmental assessment. So will the minister stand up for the wild salmon fishery, respect Justice Cohen's recommendations, and rescind this decision?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for his question. He knows very well that all of the decisions our government will be making on issues like this and allocations and quotas with respect to Canada's fisheries on all three coasts will be made based on scientific advice and the rigorous scientific standards that are required. We thought it was unfortunate the previous government did not respond formally at all to any of the Cohen Commission recommendations. We think it was an important exercise for British Columbia and a critical industry, and I look forward to being in British Columbia and publicly responding to all of the Cohen Commission recommendations.
The Moncton Riverview Dieppe.
Honourable Member for Moncton Riverview Dieppe. Today, Mr. Speaker, 1 out of 7 Canadians is over 65, and seniors are a growing part of our population. By 2036, it's projected that seniors will represent 24% of our population. This government has taken concrete action to support seniors. Could the minister responsible for seniors, that is the Minister for the Family, Children and Social Development, inform us about additional measures that this government has taken to help seniors across Canada? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for Moncton Riverview Dieppe for her excellent question and her excellent work for seniors in her riding. I have the pleasure to announce the new Horizons program for seniors, which is very important for the social participation of seniors, and I urge all members of this House to promote this program.
The House has unanimously changed copyright laws to implement the Marrakesh Treaty, freeing up over 250,000 Braille, audio, and large print books for Canada's blind at no cost to taxpayers or users. The Senate is likely to pass the same bill this month. The CEO of the World Blind Union calls the Marrakesh Treaty the biggest development for blind literacy since the invention of Braille. We need 2 more countries to sign on for it to take effect. What is the Foreign Minister's plan to recruit 2 additional countries to the Marrakesh Treaty so we can bring over 270,000 books for the blind?
The Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you. I thank the honourable member for his question. We're working very hard for a whole-of-government approach to, as we go out into the world and restore Canada's reputation internationally, to make sure that countries around the world will also implement the Marrakesh Treaty. We have opportunities later on in this month and later on in this year to work with our colleagues at the UN level to make sure that other countries indeed ratify. We get to 20 and we all work on Marrakesh. Thank you.
The honourable member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, the CEO of Air Canada was furious yesterday at the Official Languages Committee. He couldn't get over the fact that elected officials were asking for explanations because Air Canada is not fulfilling its legal obligation to provide service in French. His arrogant reaction is normal because for 45 years now, the federal government has let Air Canada violate the legislation. Since the minister was in favor of changing the legislation and helping Air Canada violate the rights of Avios workers, when will the minister change the legislation for francophones? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Air Canada must comply with the Official Languages Act, and I understand that the CEO of Air Canada testified before the committee yesterday. My colleagues and I will hear other recommendations, and I'll make my own. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, needs in healthcare are enormous, and Ottawa's not doing its share. Transfer payments are insufficient and below capacity. This government's disengagement threatens the viability of the public system and exerts untenable pressure on the finances of Quebec and the provinces. In the last budget, the government had nothing to remedy the situation. It had said that it would talk to Quebec and the provinces. Can the minister confirm that the pseudo-discussions he invoked during the budget are just flim-flam?
Mr. Speaker, as I stated in the House earlier this week, I am working with my colleagues in the provinces and territories to negotiate a new health accord. Within that accord, we will make new investments in health care in this country. I look forward to working with all of the health ministers across the country. I have already had conversations with Minister Barrette in Quebec and my other officials, and we look forward to announcing a new health accord, hopefully later this year.
The honourable member for Lana Frontenac Kingston has a point of order or question privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In responding to a question for the member for Richmond Arthabaska, the parliamentary secretary for a democratic institution said something that cannot be true unless he is accusing me of having deliberately lied to the House. He says the Conservatives stated that we would vote in favour of the NDP motion on electoral reform and then reneged. The facts as to how we were frozen out of these negotiations were related to the House by me in an SO31 on June the 6th. Exactly. Now, as the member is honourable and wants to stick to the truth, I invite him to retract his comment, which I'm sure was made inadvertently, but I'm also seeking the unanimous consent of the House to table that SO31 in order to set the record straight.
Before I go to the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, I'll ask if the member has unanimous consent to table the document. If not, I see that the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary wishes to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's entirely possible that the member opposite doesn't monitor the Conservative Twitter account that is managed by his party that stated that they supported the NDP position on this issue and that they said it was something that they could agree on. That's what I was referring to. So I'd ask for unanimous consent, Mr. Speaker, to table that tweet stating that they were going to support the efforts of the New Democrats in this matter. If I can take...
Okay, this is debate. I think I've heard enough, and unless there's unanimous consent to table the tweet, no, I didn't think so. I've heard enough for now. If necessary, I'll come back to the House. If necessary. I'll consider this. If necessary, I'll come back to the House. It being 3:09, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the amendment to the motion to concur in the Senate amendments to Bill C-14. Call on the members.